Hello and welcome to the latest edition of our Sustainability Perspectives podcast, where as part of the virtual portion of the Sustainable Packaging Summit, we hear from a range of different experts to learn more about how their company tackles the sustainability challenges the world faces. So my name is Elisabeth Skura, and today we will hear about how challenges such as plastic pollution, EPR regulation compliance, and sustainable packaging design can be addressed with the help of data and AI. And we'll learn about SAP's approach to addressing packaging sustainability and its role in the circular economy. And so Darren West, SAP's global lead for circular economy, will explain how the company supports businesses with tools like SAP Responsible Design and Production to manage the challenges the industry faces. And we'll also explore how data and collaboration are shaping the future of packaging and sustainability efforts. So, with that, welcome, Darren. Welcome to the podcast today. Great to have you here.
Thank you. Great to be here.
I thought might be nice if you could start by telling us a bit more about what SAP does and also what your role is at the company.
Certainly. So my name's Darren West. I am the global lead for circular economy here at SAP. And my work revolves around helping customers embrace circular economy principles. And right now I have a particular focus on packaging. So it was great to be at the summit recently. Our journey in this space began back in around 2019 when our CEO, Christian Klein, announced at the WEF summit at Davos that SAP would invest in solutions that would help our clients to address plastic pollution in the oceans. And this was a fabulous commitment. We're all very proud of that. And it led to us investing in this product that you mentioned, which is SAP Responsible Design and Production, which we launched in 2021. It's our first circular economy focused product. So we're very, very proud of it. And it's designed specifically to tackle packaging challenges.
That leads me to the question, why is SAP, which obviously is a company that's primarily known for enterprise software, involved in packaging?
Yeah, that's a great question. I get asked that quite a lot, actually. Even at conferences, people go, "Oh, why are you SAP here?" So SAP's involvement is rooted in our really strong relationship with the consumer packaged goods industry. So about 80% of the consumer goods industry use our software to basically run their factories, their manufacturing, their logistics, or their finances. And that means a lot of the critical data that you need to look at material movements are already in those SAP systems. So what we've done with this responsible design and production is we leverage this data that sits in those core SAP systems to calculate things like EPR, extended producer responsibility fees, and of course, more recently, plastic taxes in the UK and Spain. And we do that with really high accuracy based on actual production data. But we do a little bit more than just compliance, because one of the things I'm particularly proud of that we brought out recently was the ability to allow designers of packaging to set rules. So, for example, they might decide they want to cut out PVC, or they might decide to set a minimum recycled content target, say minimum 30% across all packaging lines. And our tool allows them to optimize that design to improve sustainability, but also to reduce fees. We're also working right now with partners to incorporate new features as well, like downstream recyclability assessment, and look at a kind of wider set of environmental impacts.
That makes sense, yes. And I wanted to ask you, what makes a data-driven approach to sustainability a good method of choice? And also within that, what types of data are most useful?
Yeah, we believe a data-driven approach to sustainability is crucial, really, because it provides traceability, transparency, and fundamentally accuracy across the whole supply chain. So if you can have live, real-time data, this ensures that kind of auditability, and it allows our customers to do better forecasting and planning at the end of the day. Businesses can understand the volumes of materials used by region, by geography. Good data also allows our customers to track the recyclability of their packaging, which is becoming more and more important, because that does link to things like impact and also EPR fees. So without accurate data, companies do risk potentially greenwashing. You could be making unsubstantiated claims, and we've seen some evidence of that recently in various jurisdictions. California springs to mind. Moreover, data enables more accurate calculation of fees, leading to cost savings. So, in essence, if you've got good data, you can make informed decisions, you can avoid pitfalls, and it means you can also improve your sustainability generally.
That definitely sounds very useful. We mentioned at the beginning the Sustainable Packaging Summit, yeah, obviously you attended it, and SAP also exhibited at the summit in Amsterdam. Um, and I was keen to hear a bit more about some of your key observations and learnings from the summit.
Yeah, several trends stood out, I think. So, first of all, there's a clear shift that we're seeing and talking to people around what I would call generally compliance in terms of, kind of where that responsibility is moving. So I read recently some research from Bain and McKinsey, and they're saying that essentially the sustainability reporting function, which was previously the remit of a sustainability team, typically a specialist team reporting to the sustainability officer, that's now moved. And the CFOs have taken back control, if you like, of that. And they're taking a much more active role in managing compliance reporting. And that includes, most importantly for this audience, I would say, EPR fees. So the CFO community are demanding real data from production systems, and they want to be able to assess actual impacts. So it's moving from a more localized approach, where you might be doing it say, at a market level, to something which is a much more centralized system, a group level strategy, if you like. And they want to minimize fees and promote a kind of common approach across the whole enterprise, as promoting harmonization, if you like. Another takeaway is the sheer volume of data required to comply with some of these new regulations, like, for example, the EU Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation, the PPWR. Now, I remember one of the speakers at the conference was emphasizing the challenges of managing such a huge amount of data, especially given the lack of standardization. So at SAP, we're collaborating with people like the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, the WBCSD, and also the Ellen MacArthur Foundation to drive packaging data standardization. And we've got a pilot program running. So if any listeners out there are interested, please do reach out to me on LinkedIn or get in touch. And I'll just quickly plug, if I may, our email address for that. So circulareconomy@sap.com. And lastly, there's a growing recognition that packaging sustainability is no longer just a CSR issue. So it's a financial and operational priority for businesses. And this shift is being driven, I think, by regulatory pressure, but also consumer demand for more transparency. And I think the rising costs associated with non-compliance. So packaging decisions now directly impact a company's bottom line, from EPR fees and taxes to supply chain issues. And businesses that can integrate those risks into their daily operations can unlock new revenue streams by doing things differently. They can reduce costs, and I think they can mitigate their risks. So what I'm seeing, to summarize, is kind of like this move from sustainability as a sort of side peripheral concern to much more of a core business strategy that influences kind of long-term profits and certainly influences competitive advantage.
And obviously, EPR schemes are constantly growing and expanding around the world. How is SAP supporting businesses to navigate this rapidly evolving landscape?
And that's a great point, Elizabeth. For example, we see this all the time. Recent changes include the rollout of packaging EPR legislation in the United States. And of course, we now see changes. I'm a Brit based in the UK, and I see, DEFRA is changing the fee structure for EPR in the UK and charging fees for the first time as well. So, yeah, they're always changing. So our approach to this is twofold. So first of all, let me start off with the more complex scheme. And what do I mean by that? So what we would define as a complex scheme is something that involves the interaction of EPR fees and the logistics data on packaging. So for example, let's take a particularly complicated one, is the Spanish plastic tax. So their customers are required to take their logistics data from imports and exports, and they have to take that into consideration when they're looking at their fees. Now, SAP does this for them. So the way we do it is we take the actual production data, but then to complicate matters, the customers are obliged to print the EPR fees on individual invoices for the materials that are going out the door. So the CPG firms, if you like, are printing EPR fee invoice information out to their retailers. And that's just something you can't do. You need that level of integration. Just can't do that on a spreadsheet, but you can do it with SAP systems. Another example of complicated schemes would be, say, France, Citeo. So you've got eco-modulation, you've just got bonus malus fees. And these bonus malus fees are linked to certain conditions, which I'm sure your audience are familiar with. In other words, the way the materials are combined. So for all these complex EPR schemes and plastic taxes, our approach has always been to hard code that into our software. And then we keep the rules up to date so our customers don't have to. So this means all the customer needs to do is create a report, click a few buttons, select the markets and the products they want, and then out pops the report with all the calculation. And we believe that this provides a lot of value to our customers, because the alternative would be they'd have to do all of that themselves, which means, they typically would need to hire a load of experts in-house, or they would pay for some external consultants to stay on top of all these rule changes. Of course, that's hard and that takes a lot of time. Now, on the other hand, doing it that way, hard coding it, there are some disadvantages as well. So we've expanded our approach. So there's a second approach that we've now adopted, which is to provide our customers with flexibility to manage additional EPR schemes and reports, basically making the most of the fact that at the heart of our software, we have a packaging data model, or the primary, secondary, tertiary detail, and also how the packaging is combined. We have that in our packaging data model. So with this new approach, customers can define their own packaging reports, their own categories, their own filters, and they can customize it to their own needs. So let me give you an example. So they could do industry-specific reports. They could, for example, do B2B packaging reports. And they can use it to gain insights into things like packaging waste in different countries, or they could drill down into the packaging data needed for detailed analysis and extend beyond SAP managed schemes to meet their global needs. So with these two approaches, we think we've got the balance of value in terms of complexity, but also maximum flexibility.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like you're giving the best of both worlds, which is what everybody wants, of course. And I wanted to look a bit at packaging design as well. And from your expertise, what should packaging designers be focusing on as they look to the future and designing more sustainable packaging?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I think this trend towards kind of more, real data and compliance, definitely designers are going to need to collaborate more closely with the CFOs and the finance teams. It will become a central issue rather than a localized market issue. CFOs are paying closer attention to packaging decisions. Another thing I think I will mention is the UN Plastics Treaty, and I'm sure a lot of people at the conference were talking about that. And then, although the treaty negotiations took place after the conference, I mean, I'm sure your listeners are really kind of following this topic very closely. And the treaty has gained some significant traction, even though it's not signed yet. There's a group of about 100 countries advocating for strong enforceable regulations to address plastic pollution. So we think it's clear that global regulation is not going away. So waste volumes are still increasing. So designers must think about how can we measure and reduce their plastic footprints. So it may involve changing into different materials, for example. It may include thinking about additives in plastics, which I personally believe will face stricter scrutiny. SAP is actively involved in this space. We're a member of the Business Coalition for a Global Plastics Treaty, and our CEO has also signed a letter supporting stronger rules along with other companies. So reinforcing our commitment to drive meaningful change in the fight against plastic pollution. In addition to that, we're also working with leaders in the field like Earth Action, which is an NGO who are the inventors of the plastic footprint concept. So you've probably heard of them. Post INC 5, we will be publishing an insight report that enables businesses to act on those treaty goals. And lastly, I think there's a growing need for a strategy on renewables. like metrics on recyclability, particularly at scale and in practice, are evolving. So designers must stay ahead by incorporating renewable materials and designing, I think, for real world recyclability.
Hmm. I wanted to zoom in a bit on the renewables and
Mhm.
asking you what's your view on how the renewable market will expand?
So the renewables market, I think, SAP is actively collaborating on this with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation as a technology partner to drive innovation in this area. And we're committed to supporting the advancement of reusable packaging solutions. There is an EMF study out there, which your listeners could find out on the web. It's called Unlocking a Reuse Revolution. And this emphasizes the critical role of scaling reusable packaging systems. And no one firm's kind of going to crack this on their own, I think. So we need scale to address the plastic crisis. And this study identifies three performance drivers. So those three are scale and shared infrastructure. So shared ideas and systems around collection, sorting, cleaning, transportation, etc. We need packaging standardization in order for that to work, and pooling of packaging. And we also need to think about how can we achieve high return rates. So all of these things are going to need data. So we're keen to provide the technology that supports these initiatives along with industry partners to try and make this happen.
And coming back to the topic of designers and packaging design, can you share a specific example of how SAP Responsible Design and Production supports designers?
Certainly, how we help designers. Imagine a company that wants to transition all of its packaging to include, say, at least 30% recycled content. Using our circular economy solution, responsible design and production, they can set this as a design rule, and they can immediately identify which SKUs or product lines fail to meet this criterion. So that means the system doesn't just flag issues, it provides actionable insights. For example, it might suggest alternative materials, or it will highlight which regions where recycled procurement is more feasible. It's all about kind of enabling proactive database decision making. And additionally, by integrating downstream data, which is coming very soon, designers can assess how changes affect downstream recyclability and therefore overall the environmental impact. And that ensures that their innovations align with both the regulations and also their sustainability goals.
I also wanted to ask you, how does SAP address the challenge of data standardization in packaging?
Yeah, data standardization is a really significant challenge. I mean, the lack of uniform packaging data standards just makes it really difficult for companies to streamline their compliance and all their sustainability initiatives, really. At SAP, we're looking at two ways of tackling this. So, first of all, we're collaborating with industry leaders. So, we're working with Ellen MacArthur Foundation, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, which I mentioned earlier, to try and harmonize these data standards, particularly around materials and formats and also recyclability assessments. We're quite keen on an open data standard that can be used by companies, NGOs, recyclers, PROs, basically everybody that needs it. So what we think is that data should be an enabler, not a barrier. And then second, we help with integrated systems. So our approach is that our software ensures that packaging data from various sources, from design to production to recycling, is centralized and standardized within a single platform. So this makes it simple to do the compliance, but it also makes it accurate, auditable, and gives you more comprehensive reporting.
And we always hear that collaboration and partnerships are really important across the industry. And I also wanted to ask you, what role do partnerships play in SAP's approach?
Now, I agree. Partnerships are critical to our success. I mean, SAP provides the core data, the analytics, the analysis, but we collaborate with lots of specialists to enhance our offering. So, for example, we partner with organizations that specialize in recyclability assessment because, we're a software company. We're not a recyclability assessment company. So we look at real expertise there and we pull that into our systems. Similarly with lifecycle analysis, we integrate their insights into our system. And this means that designers can have access to the most robust and accurate data. We also engage with NGOs, I mentioned a few earlier, industry bodies and policymakers to try and stay ahead of the regulatory trends and also advocate for standardization along, I mentioned the business coalition as well earlier. So I think standardization generally is good for everyone. So we try and ensure our solutions remain relevant and effective.
And to wrap up our conversation today, I wanted to ask you, what's your vision for the future of packaging sustainability?
Yeah, this is quite bold. I hope your listeners don't think I'm kind of like being too ambitious with this one. But basically, my vision is I would love it for packaging to be truly circular. And what I mean by that is we design out waste and pollution. We want to keep our materials in use for as long as possible. And I am quite passionate about regenerating natural systems. So this is a big goal. I believe firmly that technology will help, like responsible design and production from SAP. It can play a crucial role by empowering businesses and the decision makers within those businesses with the data they need to make informed and sustainable decisions. I also think that greater collaboration across the value chain, from material suppliers to manufacturers through to recyclers, need to be driven by data transparency and standardization and more openness. Ultimately, sustainability will be embedded in every stage of the packaging lifecycle. And that should, if we get it right, create a win-win for businesses and the planet.
Yes, that would be perfect. I agree. I think it's definitely good to be optimistic and think big and be ambitious to solve the world's problems. So, yeah, hopefully your vision will become a reality. So, that brings us to the end of today's conversation. Thank you very much, Darren, for sharing your insights and for a great discussion.
Well, thank you. That's gone really quickly. And I just want to say it's been a pleasure to discuss how we could work together to drive, meaningful change in the packaging sustainability area.
Absolutely, yes. That brings us to the end of today's podcast. And if you're interested in finding out more about what was discussed at this year's Sustainable Packaging Summit, as a Packaging Europe member, you can access all the panel discussions and presentations on demand. Just go to packagingeurope.com and click on membership to learn more. And the summit will be back next November in Utrecht in the Netherlands as well for 3 days. And also check out our website for more information. Thank you very much again, Darren, for being here. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Goodbye.